gets nothing effect. Has that one taken away by Troy Hellman. It seems like this could be.
Hello and welcome to the Overwatch League Recap, a talk show focusing on the Overwatch League. I am BlazzinBob, and today I am joined by Mr. I Play Games, aka Andres. How you doing, brother?
Hello, doing pretty good. And ready to talk Overwatch League. We had a pretty exciting week so far.
Yeah, we definitely did have a pretty exciting week. And returning to the show for a second time, fan fave, the caster of many games, LoBosco. What's going on? How you doing?
I don't know about the fan favorite parts. I mean, I'll take it, but I'm glad to be back, Bob. The Overwatch League Stage 2 has been a lot of fun already, and we're only 2 weeks in. We've got a trip that's coming up here soon that some of the teams are going to Dallas. It's going to be a ton of fun. And, of course, we had good games this previous week, too, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be going to that Dallas weekend. I'm pretty excited. But last time we talked to you was at the Guild Hall down the street from the Blizzard Arena. What have you been up to since we last caught up with you?
Oh, just, doing casting whenever I have the opportunity to really do it for the most part, Bob. A lot of open division stuff has been happening lately for me. I did a little bit of Tournament of Future Champions for
Nice. For Jane, yeah.
Jane's a good guy. He has me do stuff like that every now and then. And I did, there was actually a local LAN that happened here in Chicago that was called the Lakeside Showdown, and I was able to cast that live, which was really cool because I got to meet some tier 2 talent that came out to play and have a little bit of fun. Some of the Square One guys in Atlanta Academy, specifically, it was Big Al from Square One was one of the players. So if you're a North American Contenders watcher, you'll know him from Square One. And there was a couple of other players too, but it was a lot of fun to get to kind of do something a little bit more personal and in person.
Well, haven't you been doing something else in the podcast realm? I think we started an itch for you that you needed to scratch. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so thanks to you, I met Ramses while I was out in Los Angeles. And at the time, he was talking about this podcast that he wanted to do. And I was like, oh, this sounds like a really cool idea. And it turns out the person that he was going to originally do the podcast with backed out on him. And apparently I was his next choice. Again, don't know why I would be the one somebody would want, but I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. I love doing our recap with Bob. Let's make it happen. And now we're already, I think, 4 episodes recorded in plus an episode 0. So it's been a lot of fun, like looking at Stage 2 from a different lens, and I've enjoyed it, and I hope people will watch Push the Point.
Yeah, it's a show that seems to be a lot like ours, where we kind of talk about storylines and we talk a little bit about games, but we don't really get into the nitty gritty. And I think you guys should check it out. It's called Push the Point Podcast. Where can we follow it on Twitter?
It's at Push the Point Pod. And we got to step up the social media game a little bit more. I need to get access to that, actually. So it's a very, very fun podcast that I get to do with Ramses and I. We haven't had any guests on yet, but we're going to have some guests. Maybe you'll hear somebody that you hear right now. We've thought about maybe having this guy named Bob on for some reason. We'll see if that ends up happening or not sometime down the road. That's in the works. So, this Bob guy seems to know a thing or two as well.
One or two, but let's go ahead and get into it. I'd like to start the show by thanking our recap producers. These are the guys that are at the top level of our Patreon, and we thank them so much. That is Shazir and Ridiculous Brent. Thank you guys so much. Interviews at the Blizzard Arena are still happening on YouTube. We encourage you guys to check those out. We have a bunch of them now, so definitely check those out. Tonight we're going to talk news. We're going to talk a little bit about the teams, a little bit about what we're seeing start going with the meta here in Stage 2. But let's just jump right in. First off, Valiant signed a new assistant coach, Marvin Promise Schroeder. Now, I don't know a lot about this guy, but I thought maybe you might, LoBosco.
It's actually somebody that I don't know as much about for the Valiant, but honestly, the Valiant definitely one of the things that you hear a lot of times whenever you watch any of the broadcasts is that that's one of the areas that you need more help for the Los Angeles Valiant, and adding more support to your coaching staff I don't think is necessarily a bad idea. I mean, you saw the Dallas Fuel, who already has a fairly robust staff, even though they did lose one player or coach in Coco, take Damon over. So I mean, you can never have enough assistant coaches on your team, it seems like.
Definitely. What do you think, I play?
Yeah, I think that they need it right now. I mean, there's been a disconnect between the coaching and the player, as Lebosco was saying, and it's been apparent for a while now. I mean, we had the custom memes, for example, coming out where the coaching staff kind of came out and said, like, we're not gonna play this guy because he's too smart for the team, and like everyone's like, wait, what?
Yeah, you got
So
to be
I don't know.
careful with your bad jokes on Twitter.
You gotta be careful with those bad jokes. But I think there was a disconnect. The roster for a while has not been working. They had a terrible start, and I don't think it's because they're lacking the talent. Because last stage we had a very similar roster playing their asses off. They were playing really good. I mean, they were at least a solid mid-range team. Not in the top five. So I don't know.
Last
There's,
season, you
there's
mean?
yeah, last season.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely. I mean, they were in
Yeah,
the
not last
stage
stage.
for
Last stage they were
playoffs.
very bad. Yeah, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like I think it's good to get more in. I still just have no idea what the Valiant are doing. But then we move on to NYXL signs a new strategic coach, Won Jin Park. Once again, I don't know anything about this guy.
That's, you know what? I think this is one of the things too, as far as like Overwatch, that's a little bit more difficult to really even know is about coaching staffs, because I mean, how many coaches do you really know for even the Overwatch League on a first name basis? You know that's the coach for the team. You know what I mean? Like LA Valiant right now has a figurehead in packing 10 who's probably going to end up getting it, right? But even so, before you heard about them, I think Valiant's maybe not the best example because they've had so many coaching changes. Like there's been a little bit more attention, but it's like most teams you can't necessarily name the coaching staffs fairly easily without going to maybe Liquipedia and looking it up. At least I know I can't.
You're
I
exactly right. I mean, that's
so
a wonderful
it's
point.
rough. And
Yeah.
and
And you don't know what
and
each coach does. I,
yeah.
I mean,
th-
that's,
th-
that's why I love the Dallas Fuel YouTube. Like they do these, what's it called, on the spot or behind the point, or
I
it's
think it's
called,
on the watch, right?
yeah, on the watch, and it's great because they kind of go through. Well, this is what so and so does, and this is what so and so does. And this is a day in the life, and I mean, it's
Yeah.
really, really neat. And it's transparency they don't really have to do, but it really helps me as a fan and as a, you know, Overwatch League enthusiast really like get a handle on at least what that team does. You know, I think more teams should look into that, but I guess there's a lot of work.
It's a lot for to have that sort of production value. It's you've got to pay people to do it, and I think that's part of what you need to see a willingness to have happen from teams. And there are some teams that do it. I mean, Valiant was maybe doing too much of it at one point. If you think about last season with the whole in and out fiasco, I think New
The-
York is another team that does it really well, though, where I think that they give you the right amount of inside information that you kind of get to know the team.
yeah, what do you think I play?
As far as the New York coach goes, I don't know. Like you guys said, it's an interesting move. I think that maybe a little variety could be useful. I think that New York has always been pretty rigid when it comes to new meta changes, right? They like sticking to what they practice, what they know, and they're really good at it, especially, having guys like Jonak in their roster. You can really just rely on those guys to like be the pillars of your team. But last season, that kind of cost them getting to the stage playoffs and the final. Then this season they're looking really good um, with goats, but we haven't seen a lot of variety from them aside from playing goats at a good level. So we'll see.
Yeah, I would agree that NYXL are not innovators, but boy, they are standard setters. So once that meta is there, they just learn how to play it the best they possibly can, and it usually ends up working out for them. Timing last year was not so good. Brigitte changed a whole lot of stuff, and teams that weren't willing to get in line with it just got left behind in stage 4.
It's
But
pretty fun. Yeah.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you want, I can give you a little bit of information here, at least on Promise, as far as his history prior to going to LA Valiant. It was actually with the Mayhem for a little bit from the beginning of the season, a little bit before that in January till April 5th. And then before that, he was a coach on Mayhem Academy. Before that, Young and Beautiful, which was a pretty decent team that was playing over in contenders on the EU side. So a bit of a history with him, and it goes even further back than that, but at least things that maybe people will know for Promise.
Awesome.
That yeah, so at least a little bit of information there.
Nice. He's done its rounds on like the B circuit so far.
Yeah, contenders is a really good place, and if you think about, and maybe not necessarily for Promise, but for other contenders coaches, they sometimes will have a little bit better understanding of metas that might end up happening, because usually contenders is on a later patch than Overwatch League. It's funny because right now, I mean, now that playoffs had started for contenders, they're on the same patch, but regular season of contenders was actually on a different patch than what Overwatch League was on. They were actually the furthest behind, which doesn't normally happen.
Yep.
Well, you saw it happen at the start of the season, right? Where a lot of the teams that were coming straight up from contenders were like A plus under goats, and some of the teams that were coming from Overwatch League from last season had to work their asses off to kind of like catch up to that.
Yeah, but we're definitely now starting to see the talent of the prior teams starting to show through, and some of the expansion teams kind of getting a peg knocked out from underneath them a little bit. Next up, though, we have kind of a not very happy story, but Washington Justice assistant GM Kate Mitchell retires from the Overwatch League effective end of stage 2. She talked about getting harassed for being part of the LGBT community, and she talked about Reddit specifically causing her a lot of problems. I thought to myself when I read that, God, just stay off Reddit, dude. Just don't go on. Like, if you're famous, don't go on Reddit, especially competitive Overwatch Reddit. But do you guys have any specific thoughts about this? I don't know how, like, it's just kind of a bummer for me.
As somebody who's met Kate, it was definitely unfortunate to hear that she's going to be stepping down once stage 2 ends. I never knew her title was officially assistant general manager, which is one of the weird things with it sort of goes back to what we were talking about with the coaching staffs.
Yep.
Teams don't really put out what their staffs are. Like, I can't go to the Washington Justice page and look and see who their staff is. I can go to their Wikipedia and get an idea, but their Wikipedia doesn't tell me who's the general manager of the team. I see that Kate Mitchell is the assistant general manager. I see Mark Ian is the owner, and then I see the coaching staff. But other than that, it doesn't give me a lot of information. And then if you go to their website, it's even worse. It tells you less. So it's one of those things where it's like a little bit more transparency would be nice for that, and especially for Kate here. This is super unfortunate because I didn't think she was necessarily doing the job that she was doing was the best with the situation that she was giving. It's been very publicized how budget changes happened to her that caused her to think that she was going to have certain people on her staff. And then she ended up not being able to offer them jobs that she had verbally committed to offering them jobs. And as much as
Oh,
that's,
that
her
hurts.
naivete, that's also not good on the organization that she's working for, not giving her what she thought she was originally promised. So there's so much with this situation that I feel like that for Kate, this is maybe the best thing to have happen, especially with the ridicule that she gets for some of it for no reason too.
Yeah, what do you think I play?
Yeah, it's rather unfortunate. I think this is just a case of like the captain sinks with the ship kind of thing. Right now, Washington Justice is not doing super hot, and there's always people who are just pointing the blame, right? And like whether or not she was doing a great job or not, she's the one who was leading the team at that time, and if they need a change, they're gonna look at those positions first, right? So it's unfortunate for her. I do wish her the best. But I think right now they're going through a revamp, right? They want to switch things a little bit and see if they can revamp the team to make him not be the worst team in the league right now.
Well, and I think she's willingly stepping down. I don't think she was let go unless it was one of those things where behind the scenes they agreed that she would leave on her own type of thing. Like,
Yeah, who knows what the agreement was, but I agree with you. If you're getting harassed and you're getting that level of negativity to the point where it's affecting your life personally, and it sounds like it was affecting her, maybe this is the best thing you can do for your own health and maybe look for opportunities somewhere else. Because if what you're saying is true and she was not getting what she needed to provide the job that she was set out to do, it's only bad for her name to continue to do that, right?
Eh,
definitely.
I think so. And I think it's weird too when you think about it this way too, Bob, where think of the general manager of any sports team you know. Do they have a Twitter? Do they have some sort of social media? As far as I know, I don't know of any, at least for the teams that I follow, as far as Chicago, I don't know of any of the general managers who have social media of any form. Esports and especially Overwatch League is different, where like you have guys like Flame who are going on to a vast stream and saying things that maybe he probably shouldn't. You have him tweeting out things that maybe he probably shouldn't. You have GMs that are so much more involved socially than any other sport that you've ever seen. So it's kind of a bizarre thing when you look at it from that lens that these general managers are maybe putting more on themselves by having this social media or even just paying attention to it while they're working because how many times do you listen to sports talk radio where you'll hear a general manager like I gave the example on Push the Point of Theo Epstein, who is the head of baseball operations for the Chicago Cubs. He helped end a over 100-year drought for a team 100 years. And that guy gets crap right now because the Cubs are doing bad at the start of his season. You ended something that nobody was able to do. You take two teams and stop the curses that they had. And he gets crap right now because of how the team is performing. And he's not like, could you imagine if he was on social media and what Cubs fans would say to him right now?
Yeah, he probably quit.
Right. Yeah, you hear it on sports talk radio though. That's for sure.
Well, you make a really good point here. I think that it has to do with Overwatch League being in its infancy, right? It's like such a
Mhm.
new industry that I think that people haven't learned that lesson. And maybe over time, people will realize, like, hey, if you're going to be in charge of these kind of positions, you might not want to have your channel so open that you get flooded with this stuff because you're gonna make mistakes. Everyone's going to make mistakes in their
Yeah.
life, and even if you have the perfect coaching, something else might happen that the team is not able to perform to like what you were practicing. We hear about teams like killing it in scrims when they're playing inside of teams, like they're the top dog. When they're out on the stage, slightly different story. So I don't know, so many variables that I think that taking yourself away from that equation and not making yourself vulnerable to like those type of comments and just concentrate on doing your job might be a lesson that some of them are going to learn along the way.
Yeah, and honestly, if you're that big, what what are you getting by being on Twitter? Like, you're really just getting trolled. Like, you guys don't understand. These are trolls. They're saying things often just to make you mad, even if it's not accurate. And if, and then sometimes it's just people that don't know what they're talking about. So why waste the time replying back? And it makes no sense to me. And like, you were talking about sports, LoBosco. Like, we do see players get in trouble from time to time, and then they stop. Usually they're like, okay, they learn their lesson, and they just don't really do it after that. I don't know what the deal is. I think maybe it's people trying to keep their brand, people trying to keep their Twitters big in case they move on to something else. I don't know.
Yeah, well, nowadays social media can be kind of like a second job, or for some people it can be a second source of income. I mean, some players in the league have huge followings. Some coaches do too. Just look at
Mhm.
Jane. Like, it's almost like his second job, right? Not only being the assistant coach for Dallas Fuel, but his stream. I'm willing to bet it's as much money as he's making as a coach, maybe a little bit more.
I think it could be argued too that Jane's a coach because of his social media following
Right.
and everything
Yeah.
else too. That's what got him recognized and known and got him these opportunities. So you're right that there is sort of this duality to it for esports as a whole. But I think it's like when you're in that position, when you are a general manager, when you have that position and maybe you're not as involved, maybe you don't need to be as involved. Maybe it's something that teams need to look at doing, or at least the general managers need to look at doing is how does it help you do your job? If it doesn't help you do your job, then is it something that you need? And is it something that you're okay with putting yourself on a hiatus for just to save yourself? I mean, I don't think it's the best answer. I don't think that's something that a general manager of a team should have to do, though. Too is the thing. Like, it's unfortunate that that's the fact that we're saying this is that there are people so bad that they're just going to ridicule somebody to this extent where they it gets to levels of harassment.
Yeah, well, my advice still stands. Definitely stay off Reddit. Definitely stay off Reddit.
There's a very poignant piece from Kate in her farewell about Reddit where she talks about how she sees like how Reddit can be this I don't know, she didn't call it like life changing, but she was very eloquent with how she said it about how Reddit can be used in such a good way to help grow foster communities and things like that, but there's also this other side of it that can completely just be used to just tear people down, and she said it way better than I did.
Well, and it depends on the Reddit too, because I mean,
Yes.
I used to use one for Microsoft Exchange servers, and I mean, it was nothing, but I mean, it saved my butt many times because just really smart people there willing to help you with an intricate problem that there's not a manual for. There's so much that goes into Microsoft Exchange servers, and it's a glorious place that I've used many times. But the Overwatch competitive Reddit, I don't know, man. It scares me a little bit. I don't go on it much. But let's
Makes
talk about some games, guys. Let's talk about some games. So I want to start off by getting something real juicy right off the bat. My boys in blue, the Dallas Fuel, go 2-0 this week. One of them being a 4-0 against the Toronto Defiant. I mean, come on. And then Paris, it should have been a 3-0, but they just kind of stopped playing there in map 4. But what did you guys think of Dallas coming out hard and fast here in stage 2?
That's looking good. Your boys in blue have really stepped it up. I think that, like how we were saying before, the coaching staff, them sticking to their guns, they're playing to their strengths too, which I love. They're not trying to just blindly follow the meta. They understand the meta. They play when they have to, but they're also kind of like modifying it a little bit to suit their needs. And I really, really like that compared to other teams who I just straight up just trying to imitate like Vancouver Titans, even when going against Vancouver Titans, and that's just not gonna fly sometimes.
Dude, you talk about them changing things up. I like, okay, so Note comes in. I think Note is just a diva one trick, and Note plays all these different characters. I especially loved that Dallas went ahead and played two main tanks on Paris defense. They played Note on the Orisa and OGE on Monkey, and then they had Bastion. It was the coolest thing ever. Monkey was just causing so many problems they couldn't get into Bastion, and I just loved that. But what'd you think, LoBosco?
It was a cool comp. I really enjoyed that one on Paris. I'm not a fan of the Paris map personally, but I enjoyed what Dallas did on it. And obviously, as the residing Dallas fanboy of the three of us as well, since you're not the only one, it's nice to see them, sort of they have a plan. Effect being gone hasn't affected much of this, which is a good thing, which I'm the biggest Effect fan. Like he's my favorite player, always will be. So I'm glad to see them adjust well of without having him. And I think AKM is just continuing to grow in the Overwatch League, which is funny because this is a guy who's known from Rogue and he's just playing better and better the more that we get to see him. I think the coaching staff is definitely part of why you get to see that. Zachary is coming into his own. Note is one of the things for sure that needs to be talked about because when they made that trade with him and RCK, I was so confused. I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. But now you get to see why they wanted to do this because they wanted somebody who was a little bit more focused on the diva than RCK was. RCK was a little bit more of a flex player than Note was, but Note we get to see here can flex. I mean, he was outpacing Ivy on Zarya. It's absolutely ridiculous. Ivy's considered one of the best Zaryas in the game as far as playing triple tank, triple support. So the fact that Note's able to do that is awesome to see. They 4-0 that team who the Defiant were in a kind of a weird spot too with having I'm 37 come in, but still, you still have to be able to win the games and the field did that for both of them and just showed that it seems like the ceiling is much higher for them than maybe what we had initially thought when they had RCK. So I didn't think that this would be a trade that would work out so well for both teams, but that seems to be the
I was gonna
case.
say, yeah, like it's working out on both ends because RCK is just shining on Uprising right now. He's working really well with that team. So I don't know if there was like some next level meta read that these coaches have, and it's like, no, guys, this is what we need to do. Note here, RCK here, yes, ultimate.
Funny that you mentioned that though, because who does Note play for when he plays World Cup? He plays for Team Canada. Who was his coach for Team Canada? It was
Yep.
Jane. So you have a guy who knows him pretty darn well in Jane and knows his capabilities maybe better than other teams necessarily would. So the trade makes sense from that point. But the
Well,
other
if Jane
point
saw that, that was like genius. Yeah, I mean, he saw the light there.
I think what we see too is RCK and Note have a little bit of a different diva play style where Note is a little bit more aggressive. And when you think about how OGE plays main tank, you see how well those two end up pairing together then because of that. And who's been shining here in this previous week where we get to see them play? None other than the man, in part because Winston got buffed, but OGE looks really good.
Yeah, OGE has been killing it. Watching that guy play Winston is a pleasure. And yeah, Dallas feel really lucked out with OGE because he's not only a very decent Reinhardt player, he's just killer on the Winston and on the Hammond too. He's just a fantastic, well-rounded main tank.
Yeah, and it's been really exciting, but OGE I always thought was good. I thought he was good when he came
Yeah,
in
yeah,
last
he's
time.
always been excellent. Yeah.
Oh, I always thought so too, but you get to see he shines so much more though when he has a team that's playing a style that's more close to him, especially when the diva is playing an aggressive style too. I think that's just one of those things that you kind of miss out at times and maybe just don't notice as much. And it's cool to see that he's getting a little bit more of the limelight because of it. And just
Yeah,
his monkey's just insane.
and
You
like,
also
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say you also mentioned AKM, and I think it's worth highlighting AKM because to me he's such a resilient player. Like he was a player that when he got to the league, he had a good debut, right? And he was playing the soldier, he was playing to his strengths. And then he really tried flexing into other roles and filling a gap that Dallas Fuel had. And it was unfortunate because at the time, the team had greater problems than himself, but he was
Yeah.
put in a bad spotlight. And even though he got a lot of criticism, I mean, even memes kind of sparked out of like the 4-minute AKM blade, you know what I mean? That still linger around today.
And he
But
embraced him.
he embraced them, dude. He didn't like fall for them or like got mad or like, like quit or anything like that. Instead, he just kept his head down, just worked as a teammate, and like now look at him. He's like shining again. I think that is exemplary of what is needed in an Overwatch League player for the long run, right? To be able to stand in the Overwatch League for a really long time.
Yeah, and knowing him, and have hung out with him a few times. Like what you see there is what you get. That's what he really is. I mean, he really is just a genuinely nice guy, and he really just brushes that stuff right over the shoulder. Like it doesn't bother him. And I think, a strong backbone, and a little tougher skin is something a lot of players can, use and learn from AKM.
You almost need it, don't you? I mean, it's just we talked about the competitive Overwatch Reddit already here once before with Kate. You almost need that thick skin to be able to survive in the league, especially if you want to have any sort of longevity. And this is a guy who's had longevity in Overwatch. Think about him back in his Rogue days,
Yeah.
and I like too how you were talking about his Soldier was one of his comfort picks and things like that. And when you think of what Soldier does so well, which is tracking, we get to see him now that RCK has gone over to Boston, who has become sort of that main Sombra player for the team. It's been AKM.
And
And he
Zachary
started
some too.
Zachary too. They kind of depending on the situations, but the nice thing is you're seeing him shine in areas where we always knew he was good again too. And RCK making that move has opened him up to be more, Zachary will play the Sombra sometimes, but it seems like the main Sombra on the team now has gone over to AKM.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. One thing you mentioned about Note being more aggressive and RCK being less is RCK still eats so many more ults than Note does. But
Insane.
at the same time, I'm kind of okay with that because Notes, just like you said, Notes opening up OGE to really shine like he can. It's kind of the same thing. We always talked about Note and Gamsu last year and how they were the best tank duo. Maybe Note was just making Gamsu look good.
I think Gams is still a good main tank though. I mean, he's
No, I
starting to
think
look
he's
really
good.
on Shanghai now because look at the off tanks that he's been starting to work with now over there. So I think you're right though that like Note definitely enables. It's sort of like a quarterback can make a wide receiver look so much better than the wide receiver necessarily is in football. I think it's sort of a similar thing with maybe the off tank can really make a main tank look really good, especially if they're already a really good main tank.
No, it's true. Like a good diva can make your Winston look like he is invincible, and people will be like, "Wow, his Winston never dies." And it's because his diva is just eating up every single amount of damages coming at him with the Matrix.
Yep. Why didn't you do that for me the other night, I play?
This is why I'm not an owl. This is why I'm not an owl main tank.
Oh yeah, I play has been learning Diva, and I've been continuing to learn Monkey, and we've been playing. We played some over the weekend, and it was a rough night. Surprised we didn't
It
lose
was still
much
very
more
fun.
SR. Oh yeah, it was good. We
Yeah, we
learned
did
a
lose a
lot.
bunch of SR though.
Yeah, and
We're practicing a lot of compositions that are not in their comfort zone though.
oh yeah, me on Wrecking Ball is definitely not comfort pick.
What SR? What SR is it?
Like
we were
around
playing,
Diamond,
yeah,
like
we were playing
3000.
in a
Ah.
6.
Oh, if you guys are around there, I got to play with you guys then because it's right about where I am at too.
Oh
so.
yeah, you should join. It's fun, dude.
Yeah, we'll get you in our podcasters Discord after this, definitely.
I'm down.
All right, so next, the Shock continue to reign terror over stage 2 with another 4-0 on the charge. Do you think Shock shows signs of slowing down at all?
The Shocker's scary. The Shocker's scary. Like I forget who it was. It was somebody I was watching one of the watch points, and it was either Brent or Sideshow. I think they said that they might be the second best team in the league. They very well might be better than New York.
I think so.
It's tough. It's really tough, but it's like
Right now,
they look so
Shock is
good.
Shock is playing as if they were mad. It seems like losing that final just fueled them for this stage 2, and they're coming out to prove something because they've been playing against more of like, the low tier teams here in the league. Their first 2 matches have been against those, but they have left without a doubt that they're the top dog in those games. Like, I don't think they've wanted to leave those games just, barely coming out on top. No, they want to send a message to every other team in the league that if you're playing against them, you better be ready because it's like you said, they're not slowing down.
It's almost like a sleeping giant was woken up in that finals, that stage 1 finals between them and Vancouver. Like, you think about the youth of that team and the talent that they have, like, a team that's motivated the way they are, and now you have a little bit of extra motivation for San Francisco, and you can say Vancouver has it too, since both teams don't have anybody currently in the All-Star voting in a spot to play. Like, that's just another chip on the shoulder for both of these teams. So, like, the more fuel to the fire, the better. I'm okay with seeing an angry San Francisco Shock. It's fun.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And it's like what you said, they tasted victory. For a second there, they could have been the champions of the stage. And not only that, but defeat the top dog, Vancouver, who no other team has been able to defeat. They've been the closest to achieving that than anyone else. And I think that, like what you said, that's kind of like the carrot in front of the stick
Yeah,
for them. They're chasing that high again. They really want it.
you
Yeah.
gotta get it too.
And I mean, I got to eat crow, I guess, because, I didn't think that I didn't think they'd be able to get it together, until at least the second half of the season. We talked about that, LoBosco, back at the Guildhall. But,
Mhm.
man, I think you might be right. That, that stage finals, let them know how good they were. And, they were so brokenhearted. You could see Super's face when they lost that last match. And well done, Super, for just sucking it up, coming back in strong, playing monkey, who everybody knocked you on. I mean, like this is just awesome. I'm excited to see San Francisco do even more. But the next thing, LA Gladiators. They are off to an amazing stage 2 start at 4-0 now with a map score of 12-4-1. I mean, they are like +8. They are killing it. Did like I okay? Anybody have anything to say? Like, I mean, I think it's because of Decay, but what do you guys think?
Decay is a part of it for sure. I think we sort of saw this at the end of of stage 1 anyways. We saw it sort of going that way. It seemed like they were going to be a team that, they were going to miss stage 1 playoffs. It was a foregone conclusion with how bad of a start they had to the season, but they worked Decay in, they figured some things out. They look like one of those teams that are maybe trying to put themselves, they're in that next tier, that tier right below where you have Vancouver, San Francisco, and New York. They're one of those teams there. They might even be at the top of it. And that's sort of something that they seem to be out to prove, is that they are, and they want to show maybe they can even compete with those top teams. Maybe that's that their schedule is not going to be the easiest one. Any team that plays in the Pacific doesn't have an easy schedule. That's just the kind of the gist of it, because you've got to play San Francisco and Vancouver twice sometime somewhere in your season. So that already makes it difficult. So they are a team that I think that if you're not watching them closely already, you really do need to.
What do you think, I play?
Yeah, Gladiators are one of those teams just has incredible potential. They had a slow start last stage. I think they struggled a little bit getting into the role of things. This stage, they're looking a lot better. I do think that, they didn't have the toughest matches this stage, although they did take full advantage of them. I think that the charge has been struggling a little bit. They
Extremely.
did Yeah, they did go against San Francisco and Gladiators, which are two good teams. But aside from that, they haven't really showed much. Right now, I'm tempted to say they're looking like the worst of the Chinese teams coming into the league. So I don't know. Gladiators did really well. They did beat Valiant, which they had a pretty good start against my boys, Atlanta Reign. So I was a little bit disappointed there. I really thought that we could take that match. I'm really sad that we were the first to fall down to the Valiant. So the Valiant were on the up and up, and they still got shut down by Gladiator. So I think we still know who the best LA team is, at least for now.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, let's talk about the Valiant. They get their first win over your boys, the Atlanta
Oh
Raid.
my God, I was so sad. I was like, no, not the first.
Oh man, it's just rough. But like, what's going on with Atlanta Rain?
Man, Atlanta, I think that they're having a little bit of trouble adjusting to their new roster. I mean, they lost a friend, which I think was an exceptional player. His stats on Zarya spoke for themselves. He
Mhm.
was doing a lot for the team, and Baby Bay is having to fill in some pretty big shoes. And I think he's been performing okay. Like I've said this before, he's a very mechanically gifted individual, but I think that he lacks a little bit of the X factor that some of these other Saria players have. Like when you're looking at Sumisu, when you're looking even at the friend, they really can read the match at a different level, and constantly you see the friend maybe being in the wrong position or getting picked in the wrong place. Right now, Sarias have a huge target on their back. That's what every team is looking to kill at the beginning of every match. And if you're the Saria who's dying at the beginning of the match, you're putting your team at a huge, huge disadvantage. And I think that he still needs a little bit of practice with that. I mean, his mechanics are there. He's an incredible Widowmaker. He can hit the shots with Zarya. He can get his skills. Is more of a matter of how he's utilizing the rest of the team and not getting cut out in those key positions. And then we also lost the off tank that they've been playing with, Daco. We're playing with why am I blanking on his name right
Brian
now?
or
Yeah,
FRD.
FRD. We're playing with FRD, which has been doing okay. But honestly, I thought that Daco was gelling pretty well with Pokpo in that stage one. I don't know if it's because that they had the friend with them too, but I never thought Daco did a bad job. So I don't know why he's on the bench.
Well, and that's interesting because so Defran brings a lot of intangibles that weren't talked about a whole lot in like the Overwatch League coverage. Defran is like kind of a savant in ult counting. Like he knows what ultimate is up on the other team at all times. And that was something I talked about, an episode or two ago, but I was worried who's going to be the ult counter because that's a very important thing. Like the ult counter for the Dallas Fuels closer. I mean, and these guys being able to tell their team this ults up, this ults up, this ults up just makes your team inherently better because now your Reinhardt's going in ready for a shatter where he might not have been thinking about that. He's thinking about his positioning, blah, 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 blah. But I think that was something big that the Atlanta Raid lost, and now I don't know who their old counter is. You know what I mean?
It's interesting that you say that because I always thought it was Mazasa was the one who was the
Masa.
alt tracker for them because that was one of the things that he was known about prior to coming into Overwatch League was his incredible alt tracking ability. So it's interesting to hear that it was actually DeFran was the alt tracker for Atlanta. So
Well, hold on. Let me retract that then. Defran's the one that I knew about that was
okay.
extremely good at old tracking.
So it
Just
could have
just
been
from
both of
watching
them.
his
And
just
yeah,
from watching
and
his
to be
stream.
fair, To be
Mhm.
fair, in Overwatch League, there's probably like more than one guy that is really good at counting ults. Like all of them have to be very decent at counting ults, right? Like
Yes.
maybe some of them are just like, that much better than others, but like everybody has to be
Mhm.
at least on the same page there.
It depends on the structure of the team. Some teams, they'll have it where you track the ultimate of your counterpart. Some
Hmm.
teams have one person who does it just because they're that good at it, and that's usually one of your not main shot caller, but one of your main callers on the team.
Yeah, the
So maybe
strategist or something
yeah,
like.
usually your like main shot callers, your main tank. So it kind of really depends, but
Mhm.
it is still that's still a loss though, because like you said, because having somebody like DeFran who can track alt so well to add on to your main, alt
Masa and
tracker.
yeah, them.
And and to more to your point though about DeFran and the difference between him and Baby Bay is the brain is so different between those two because
Mhm.
you could say DeFran's just a savant at the game. His ability, his game knowledge is something that has been described by many to be on a different level than most of the players in the league. So I don't think you're far off with saying that the mind is one of the big things. I mean, think about Fury just baiting Baby Bay when they played London in week 1. Like Fury turned his back purposely to Baby Bay and was like, "Throw your alt out," and then does a quick 180 and eats it like it's nothing. He baited him into that so hard. I think Baby Bay even made a tweet about it afterwards about how hard he got baited. But that makes a difference. And then, like you said, Daco being out hurts as well because now you don't have that synergy that you had with him, DeFran, and Pokebo. And now Pokebo has to start to understand how Fried plays
And
we've
Baby
already
Bay,
right and
both of them,
Baby
yeah, both of the support, his support staff basically change.
right. The person who's going to eat stuff for him change. The person who's going to give him utility bubbles change. Like there's so much that just changed, especially when you talk triple tank, triple support for this team. And it's rough because it's like those changes are a little bit bigger than maybe people realized. It's why it takes a little bit of time to for teams to get really acclimated with goats. It's why teams were so bad at the start of stage 1 with goats at the beginning, and they got better as the stage went along. So I think Atlanta, this might be a lost stage for them with how tough of a schedule they seem to have to this stage. I think it gets maybe a little bit easier now for them, but
A
still,
little
it's
bit, but I
not a
think you're
lot.
right. I think that this stage is gonna be a learning stage for them. Like they gotta regroup, they gotta see how they're gonna play together again. They gotta account for their losses because I think that the team still has a lot of potential. I think Masa, Dogman are excellent players. Baby Bay is also an excellent player, but he's been on the bench for some in San Francisco for a while, so he still has to kind of like rise to the occasion and meet all
Yeah.
these other people that are playing at that level. So Atlanta has some shoes to fill. I don't think they're going to be bottom of the barrel. I mean, they at least they were able to beat Washington Justice. At least we can still do that, boys. But yeah, I don't think we'll be contesting for stage playoffs like we did last stage, unfortunately.
Erster Kink isn't gonna keep getting 6Ks though. So like they gotta get it together sooner than later. Erster's
It's true.
amazing though. I just wanted to point that out
That
because
was
He
great.
is.
That 6K
He
was
is. He is.
amazing.
he's I think he's the best player on Atlanta right now. I think that if there's one person that you're saying isn't the problem for your team, it's Erster.
Yeah,
It's
he's Brigitte bound though. Forever Brigitte.
you can
Brig
still be a good
jail.
Brigitte. Hey, I
Yeah.
mean, just because you're in Brig jail doesn't mean you can't be the biggest Brig in the jail. So
It's true.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
true.
like
Ikigo will
ask,
tell you
yeah,
that.
ask Haskell. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
major plays in the stage playoffs, and yeah, but something else I wanted to kind of touch on: the London Spitfire 3-0. The return of Monkey has definitely helped gesture out quite a bit, in my opinion. But we can't be sleeping on these guys now. Like they were looking real rough, but Bird Ring's back in the mix. It's been interesting.
He's not playing
I
Zarya.
I just knew this was gonna
Nope.
happen. Like when I saw London Spitfire struggling in the middle of stage one, I was like, No problem. This is just London's regular London Spitfire. Like they just have those horrible seasons, and then all of a sudden they decide to wake up. Like, oh, if we feel like trying this time, then they do absolutely great. Then they go to sleep again for a little bit more, have a terrible stage, and at the end it's like, guys, we should probably do good for playoffs. We at least gotta make it. You know what? Let's just win the whole thing, and then they're good.
They thought they're like, this prophet guy, he's a kind of a good player, right? Maybe best DPS player in the league. Maybe you could give him that title. Maybe we should put him on Zarya, not Brigitte. Like, let's try that, guys. Let's see what happens. And like, what happens? Holy crap, he's actually a pretty darn good Zarya. Shocker there that one of the best DPS players who can play like every character is a good Zarya. Who would have thought that one would have happened? And I don't know. I think the fact that Winston comes back in helps gesture immensely, because we see he's not the strongest on Reinhardt, which is kind of unfortunate. But you know what? When you pair him and Fury, who I contest still that Fury is probably he's one of the most underrated players and maybe the best off tank in the league. So you've got plenty of good pieces to work with on this team for London, and we talked about that sort of that tier right underneath those top three. I think it's safe to say that right now, London has to be considered part of that because they have looked so good this stage.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, like maybe this season, but I mean, last season when we were talking to the players, every time we were told the best divas were Fury and Space because they had the ability to flip a switch and go from offensive diva to defensive diva, which most divas in the league did not have that. They were either a defensive or they were an offensive. Like they didn't really have a change of play style, but Fury and Space could just flip a switch and just boom, be a different player. And I mean, I think he's great too. Looking at some other stuff, NYXL is still awesome. Mayhem still sucks. Is there any other teams that you guys wanted to talk about before we close it out with meta discussion?
I just wanted to mention how New York Excelsior was just flexing on Washington Justice. Like, oh my God. Jonak just wanted to let everybody know that he hasn't gone anywhere.
Oh
He's
my
still
God, you're
there.
talking about Hanamura, aren't you?
Yeah, Hanamura, where he just walks in and kills everyone in the enemy team. What's in? It's like, guys, I got this. You guys take a little break. I got this.
It's awesome when you can just see a guy do that. It's ridiculous.
Oh, dude, it was crazy. It was like, oh, and he kills another, and he kills another. I think it was Sembler casting that or something, just freaking out, losing his mind.
I got one more team I'd like to talk about, and that would be the Hangzhou Spark, because they finally played Crystal. And what happened every map they played Crystal? They won.
They broke the uprising curse, dude.
Exactly.
The reverse sweep curse finally is broken.
Exactly. They actually looked like a team that could compete with some of these other teams. And this was Boston, who you're like, oh, they look pretty good here with RCK now in the mix. We talked about that win-win. So for the Spark, I want to see more Crystal, please. More Crystal. Also, IDK has the biggest brain ever. That play to throw, to go to camp and wait for the Zarya and then boop the Zarya off the map is just, I don't think I've ever seen a well thought ahead play like what IDK did there to make his team win and what looked like they were going to lose. So that play, I feel like needs a little bit more credit than it gets, because I know that the big, it lost, what was it, Saturday that game was? It lost as far as top play because the Valiant got top play for actually winning. It's like, come on, man. That IDK play is so big brain. How do you not make that number one?
Yeah, Spark looked really good, especially playing against Uprising. Like, I was ready to just see Uprising again do a 3-2 for like the fourth time in a row. But no, Spark edged it out. I'm proud of them. Revenge for my boys, Atlanta.
Curious about IDK's name, because I assume that he was just sitting there needing to make his name, and he was like, I don't know, IDK. That's all I can think of.
I'm not sure, honestly. This guy who It's funny, like this week, like a lot of the players from Contenders China were like players that got highlighted who played well, like Crystal, Gushue played really well. You had uh IDK, who was a Contenders China player, even though he's Korean, but he played on Lucky Future Zenith. DM played awesome. Erster had a 6K. This was like the week of Contenders China season 2 players like just popping off for some reason. I don't know why it was this week was the one that had happened, but it just happened to be the case. And I'm happy to see that as somebody who casted a lot of these guys who are now in Overwatch League. So it's good to see that happen.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I
I
bet.
had
I
to I
bet.
had to mention Crystal because it's like we've been like there's been all this speculation of him maybe getting traded or whatever. It's like, okay, now maybe they see for the spark. Why were they holding him out? Who knows? But maybe now they realize they need him in just as much as they need Gushue to
Isn't
play.
him like one of the highest T-shirts sold or something like that for like the Chinese region?
I believe it's Gushue is the one. I know Crystal's
Okay, it
probably
was
one
Gushin.
is Gushue. I know is one of the top selling jerseys. Actually, might even be the top selling jersey if I'm not mistaken. But
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's
but
a
I
Spark player that has one of the top selling jerseys.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Crystal was up there though too. Like
I
that's
mean,
entirely possible.
Gushue is definitely in the top 5 of sales, worldwide. I don't know about China specifically, but worldwide, Gushue is in there.
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
I did wanted to say one last thing before we close
do
it
it.
out. I just special mention to Houston Outlaws. I think that they played really good this week, especially because of the team that they were playing against, Vancouver Titans. The only thing that I would have wished is that they had played to their strengths a little bit more. They really tried out playing Vancouver on the goats, and I think that's just one of the worst plans that you can have. Like, they're the goats teams, and like I don't know. They did really good in that initial map when they played Linkser on the Soldier 76. Granted, it was a control map and you have more leeway on the strategies you can play there. But yeah, congrats to them. They're finally looking a little bit better. I just wish they would have played a little bit more risky, like taking a little bit more risk with the compositions and not just play so safe after they got that first win.
Yeah, because, I mean, we've seen over this season 2, Vancouver does struggle against DPS comps. I mean, look at Chengdu. They were able to take him out. I mean, just give it a shot on a payload, like give it a shot. Why not? Like
it, it,
you've already lost it. You've been pounding your head. Like just give it a shot.
it's so hard though to move a payload on DPS compositions. Like I know why they did it, and you want to play against the best goats team because you're going to learn something too. You want to play goats v goats against them.
Well,
You really do.
okay. At least do it on the 2 CP map. They didn't do it on
No, in
Paris.
Paris. In
But
Paris, they went still goats. But yeah, I can see what
Paris
you're
is the
saying.
hardest one to do it though, too, to not play goats. Like that's the thing. Like
Hmm.
Paris, you have that small little choke to get through, and like it's so easy to just get picked off. And they did at least try a bunker comp at one point, but that got blown up real easily.
Yeah, I got blown up real quick.
So it's like it's one of those things where you're sort of damned if you do and damned if you don't. So I don't necessarily disagree with what they did. I was actually okay with the fact that they were like, you know what? Because you're not going to be able to play those DPS comps against every team too, because other teams will be able to run DPS comps against you, and then you just go back to 3-3. So you still got to
Here's
be able to
here's
play it.
my only thing. I think that one of the biggest assets that the Outlaws have is Linkser. That kid can play really, really well. And I think that whenever Linkser is in, the team looks good. When Linkser is out, they look okay,
Mhm.
edging on mediocre, to be honest. So I
Definitely.
don't know, and I know that Linkser is not like a goats player. Like you don't necessarily want to put him on the Brigitte. Maybe there's better options on him. But for example, on Paris, when you wanted to go bunker, and you don't have Linkser, and that's kind of like the clutch moment where you do want to have that guy in, and you don't have it because later you want to flex on the Brigitte. So I guess that is the type of risks that I'm talking about. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I think that's completely understandable. I think the biggest thing that I have is mechanically, Linkser is probably the most gifted player on the team. So you should still want him in goats anyways. Like I don't know why you can't figure out how to get him to work on the Zarya or to work on the
Well,
Brigitte. Like
I know from interviewing him, he wanted to play the Zarya. We interviewed him like I don't know, week 2 or 3, and he wants to play the
Who's
Zarya, but Spree is
Yeah.
a really good Zarya, and
he's an okay Zarya.
oh
I
no,
mean,
he's really good.
he might be the best Zarya in Outlaws, but I don't know. Compared to some of the other Zaryas in the league, he's not doing anything amazing to me.
Well, it's weird because Dante was the one who was playing a lot of this Zarya. Dante, I think, for a while was one of the top damage, not the top, but was one of the top damage dealing Zaryas. So
Yep, I had him on my fantasy team. He was doing me
it,
good in stage 1.
it's kind of a Houston's. I think just Houston's in a weird spot where like they're the players that they have just don't work perfectly in this
Hmm.
meta, at least on those maps specifically too. I feel like if they had the other map pool, I think you would have saw them play a lot more DPS compositions just because there's more opportunities to do it. So I think that was just kind of unlucky too with the draw of maps that they ended up playing. So
Although, isn't this Houston's history though? Like they're always lacking like that one player for the meta.
it seems to be that way, doesn't it? Like almost every meta that they've played in, they're like lacking that
It's
one
like,
little
oh, if they
thing.
just had a good tracer. Oh, if they just had like a good, Zarya. Yeah, but I don't know.
Well,
Well, speaking of compositions, though, let's talk about some. Let's talk about what was played. Something that this is not going to be a really long one, but like, I just want to hear from you guys what you saw interesting in meta this week. Like, what I saw was a lot of Baptiste using his ultimate to heal Bastion. And I thought that was really a neat idea. Like in bunker comps, they're using the ult not to get damage really, but to empower the Batiste and the Ana to keep the Bastion up. I thought that was interesting. What did you guys think was interesting this week? Or you could touch on what I just talked about.
I think to touch on what you were talking about, hexagrams could not stop talking about how much healing you can do through the amplification matrix. So I think you're kind of spot on there. I think was most interesting was to me was the yes the Baptiste, but how Baptiste was being used, which kind of people thought would be how he would with bunker comps, and the amount of bunker comps that we ended up seeing, especially with Paris too. Like Paris is like where
Big
you
time.
really saw bunkers on that first point, and I'm okay with bunkers. I think it adds a different element, and you've got to figure out how to attack them. I think that maybe bunkers might end up getting stronger with some changes that may come through, which is sort of an unfortunate thing to think about. But I'm really curious to see how teams are going to try attacking these bunker compositions because I think that's one thing that teams haven't really figured out was how do they want to destroy and dismantle them.
Yeah, bunker is becoming really appealing to a lot of the teams. And I mean, you can see why they have so much utility now, especially with Baptiste. You finally have like that missing piece of like, okay, if everything goes to shit or we get EMP'd or anything like that, as long as we have or Baptiste somewhere in a safe zone, we can withstand the storm and not have to lose our position, which is the only weakness that that composition has, right? Like if they have to lose their high ground or scatter around and not be able to be in the bunker anymore, you're kind of screwed. Not anymore. Now you have a lot of staying power, and teams have also figured out like ways like using the diva to just contest a point on her own, so you can still keep your bunker up there and touch. So I don't know. It seems like a well-rounded composition nowadays, and for some maps, it is becoming kind of like the default composition to play. I like it though because is one of those compositions that has clear strengths and clear weaknesses. It's not so much like goats, which is an all-around just composition you can just take anywhere. Not so much anymore as it was in stage one. But bunker is very polarizing, right? Like you're putting all of your resources, massive firepower into one location, and you're giving up a lot of things like mobility. You sacrifice all of your mobility in order to accomplish this.
Which
So
is
I don't know.
why I loved how Dallas threw Monkey in. They're just like, we'll just have Monkey just disrupting everything while we just kill everything. I thought that was great too. Did you guys see anything else that was like kind of jumped out at you?
Well, that the Dallas one in particular, I think, was one that jumped out. It didn't work perfectly against Paris, but it worked so well on, whenever they did seem to use it. It was cool to see how they use the Winston for the mobility in that way. And then of course you still had your Orisa, you had your Anna who could heal the and throw out those bionades and everything. It was just an interesting take on the bunker composition. And I think we're going to see more tinkering from teams with the bunker. But the other thing too is we saw a little bit more of Baptiste getting thrown in. Is we'll have that as our instead of an Anna or the Zen, it was Baptiste you saw sometimes in goats, which I thought adds a little bit of a different flavor to things as well. I don't think it works as well in that sort of a comp, but I think it's a fun little wrinkle that maybe works better on certain maps other than others. And we get to see some DPS still at times on certain maps too. So I'm just happy that we're
Definitely.
getting to see a bit of variety. I think I've seen a lot of people calling it sort of 60-40, where it's like 60% triple tank, triple support, and 40% whatever.
Some other stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
it does seem to be the case. And you can see it at the top level. Some of the best teams really like their goals and they're not letting it go. One, because they're incredibly good at it. And honestly, when other teams go against them, they sometimes don't stand the chance against their goats. I'm thinking about like San Francisco Shock or Vancouver
Vancouver,
Titans.
yeah.
Yeah, where they're really just imposing that gameplay. And right now, we're in a fine line where I think that if literally any of the other teams is able to contest these top teams with something that is not goats, like triple DPS or bunker, and they have any success, we might see more of a shift in the meta. But as long as these top teams keep exerting their dominance with goats, we're still gonna see like that 60-40 split that you're talking about.
I think it's so map dependent too. I think that's a big
Mhm.
part that needs to be considered here too.
Which is
Y-
awesome. I mean, it's
right, yeah,
awesome that
right,
before it was dive, and you just ran dive. Like that's just what you did. This
yeah.
is awesome that we're getting different takes, and they are trying different things out. And I just enjoy seeing DPS. I mean, like I've enjoyed we got to see some Tracer play. We've gotten to see some Genji play, which
The tracer plays have been really cool.
the Tracer. See, for me, the Genji plays like I just getting to see 4 dash resets in a row is something that I've been missing in my life. Like I didn't really love dive, but I loved the Genji play in dive. So,
It's something to be seen when somebody's really good at Genji. That's for sure.
but is there anything else you guys wanted to touch on?
Not in particular. There's
I think
just
that'll do it for me.
yeah. I think it's just I don't know how much more the meta is going to change. I still think Goats is the strongest. I think is the one thing. So
Well,
until you can dethrone the champ, it's gonna be it. It's gonna be the one. It's gonna be the main.
well, every interview we're doing on YouTube from Friday moving forward, we are asking the 222 roll lock and if the players want it. And so far, both players we've asked are definitely for it. So hopefully I can make a little collage of players saying they want it and
Yes.
send it to Blizzard because
Trying to send a message.
yeah. I mean, it would just make the game better. But that's a conversation for another time. We're actually ending on time. So I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping us up. Please join our Pick'em League. You can find the link in the notes below. We encourage you to follow us on Twitter at OWL Recap. If you want to say something a little longer, send us an email to contact@alrecap.com. You can also find us in the Omnic Lab Discord. You can get there by going to discord.me/OmnicLab. Omnic Lab game night is going to be it's not next Friday, but the Friday after the 26th. So make sure and come to that. Like players of any level are welcome. It is a good time. You can learn from better players. You can, it's just a really good time, and I encourage you guys to come. We stream live every week on Twitch at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's at twitch.tv/OwlRecap. have actually been really good the last couple weeks, being right on time. So hopefully we can keep that going for you. Sometimes it's a little rough with guests, but we've been hitting it pretty good. You can also find us on any podcatcher you can think of, really. I mean, anything but SoundCloud. I mean, you can find us there. iTunes, Spotify, whatever. How can you help the show? You can help the show by telling your friends, screaming it out loud, running out of your apartment right now and saying, Google Al Recap. You can help us in many ways. Just, tell people about the show and what you like about it and just talk about us. You can leave us a review on iTunes. I don't think Spotify does it yet. Stitcher, whatever. We try to read those on the show, but reviews have been a little slow for a lot of Overwatch podcasts for a long time now, which is really weird because it's like in the app now. You can just scroll down and just say leave a review or just click that 5-star and you can help us out that way. If
Come
you
on,
wanna,
guys, just leave a review.
yeah, please. And if you want to go above and beyond, go to patreon.com/Al Recap and pledge $1. I mean, $1 an episode can make a difference in these podcasters' lives. So give it a shot. All right. I play games. Where can we find you, sir?
If you want to find me, you can look me up on Twitter at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games.
And what about you, Mr. LoBosco?
It's really easy. It's my last name. It's at LoBosco, LOBOSCO on Twitter. You can also find the Push the Point podcast on Twitter as well, Push Point Pod. You can also find it where you find this podcast of all places too. So, just go looking for Push the Point podcast. You're going to find it. But again, Push Point Pod is the Twitter handle. Be sure to follow us there. Every episode that gets posted, go get, we tweet it out and let you know when it comes up. So it's been fun so far, and it was fun to be here again.
Yeah, and I would love to. I heard you talking about possibly doing live shows in the future on your last episode. Is that something you guys are working towards quickly?
We'll see. A lot of it hinders on Ramses and whether or not he'll be able to do it. I know he had some issues with stability as far as the internet. It seems like it's getting better now, so it's looking like more and more that it's a real possibility moving forward.
Ramses, you just need to tell him to stop messing with his volume button on his microphone, because every time he comes, he's like trying to mute it by just putting the volume all the way down. But then when he comes back, he's like lower, higher. But he's gotten a lot better since starting, and I'm excited to see him. I think he's a really good talent. I was the one that introduced him to Jaw, because Jaw taught me a lot. And so I'm hoping, I'm excited, and I'd love a live show just so I can come in and comment on your stuff live. You know what I mean?
We'd enjoy that too. So I hope we get to that point, so that way we can do that and just get the name out there a little bit more. I think being on Twitch is something that definitely helps out.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, most of these shows we don't get a ton of people watching live, but it is neat for the people that do come, and it's neat for us just to have people talking in chat, and chat helps us a lot of times too with accurate information, helping us look things up. I mean, it's just a cool thing. But you can find me on Twitter at Blazzin_Bob. That's BLAZZIN_BOB. Thank you everyone for listening, and Mel will be back next week. We bid you adieu.